to start. Okay. All right, we'll have our speakers come on up. Hi, everybody. Good evening, and thank you very much for coming. So my name is Ann Hartman. I'm the Dean of the Education Program, in case some of you I haven't met before. And we're so happy that you came tonight. So obviously after the false missile alert on Saturday, the 13th, I believe it was, many of us, and I think across the island, we all felt like we were ill-prepared and didn't have quite as much information about all aspects of this kind of threat that we might want to have in order to prepare and think about our response in an appropriate way. So here at the East West Center, we value information, and we think information is power, and that decision making should be driven by having as much information as possible. So we thought we do have resources that are in our building as well as in our community that can give some information that we hope will be helpful to you as you think through your own personal planning and decision making. In the coming weeks, we're going to have some meetings in both Hale Manoa and Hale Kuahine to talk more specifically about emergency plans and what we're trying to do for those particular structures, as well as the rest of the buildings on the East West Center campus. So this, this kind of alert made us realize, like, we're not really prepared either. So we need to think through what we need to do and how we can advise everyone that is part of this institution, either as a visitor or as a resident or as an employee. So that is what we're working on now. Efforts are very quickly, and a lot of efforts are underway on this process. So, but tonight's session is to give you all information so that you can think about your own personal readiness, really, and how you want to respond. Because keep in mind, you might not be here. So knowing about this building is one thing, but you could be anywhere. So it really is to try to help you think about what your own preparedness plan is, and how to understand the likelihood of such a threat and where such a threat might come from, and to get some of the context. So with that, we have 3 speakers here tonight. First, we'll hear from Denny Roy, who is a senior fellow in the East West Center Research Program in Security and Politics. And I've known Denny for a long time, and he's been studying North Korea for even longer than that. So he follows issues in Northeast Asia very closely, and in the security world more broadly, very closely as well. So we're very fortunate to have Denny with us today. Second, we'll have Mrs. Helen Nakano from Be Ready Mānoa. And she's the one who's brought all these goods for us. And she's gonna talk about the specifics of being prepared for this kind of emergency and what they're sharing with the community up in Manoa, as well as for any emergency here in Honolulu. And finally, we're lucky to have Dr. Alan Clark, who is the director of our professional development program, but used to be and spent many years as the executive director of the Pacific Disaster Center, which was previously on Maui, but is now, I think, on Oahu? No, still on Maui.
Still on Maui, but bigger on Oahu now.
Okay, bigger on Oahu than it used to be. And so Alan will fill in a little bit of the detail between these two of just kind of the nature of this kind of attack, what it might entail, how to think about a radiation incident, and some things that you might do specifically for that kind of event. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Denny. Each speaker will take about 10, 12 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, thank you.
We don't need this, do it. No, I'm going first because my remarks are going to be the most sort of abstract and contextual, setting the context and the atmosphere, and then we'll get more practical with my colleagues here. But I'm just going to try to answer 3 questions, which I think are likely on your minds. The first question is, why would North Korea want to threaten Hawaii with a missile attack? Fair question, right? Does that come across your minds? You have to understand the worldview of North Korea, decades-old competition between two Korean states separated after the Second World War, bitter rivals, and both trying to show that they are the authentic Korea. And it's become clear in the last few decades that South Korea is winning that competition with North Korea, hands down. South Korea and North Korea have roughly the same amount of territory, but South Korea now has twice North Korea's population. More importantly, the South Korean economy is about 30 times the size of the North Korean economy. And really telling statistic is that the average South Korean is about 2 inches taller than the average North Korean. Now, 2 inches may not sound like that much, but that's really profound. Social, nutritional, physiological difference, showing what kind of difference there is in the conditions of the two countries. So, while North Korea we know well as a country that often spews this extreme bravado in their rhetoric, seemingly indicating great strength and aggressiveness, North Korea is actually a very weak country. It's a country that's losing badly this rivalry with South Korea. And consequently, it's a country that is afraid, deeply insecure, of losing its own existence as a separate state, and particularly the regime and the folks in that regime are worried about losing their positions and their status. So North Korea worries about being absorbed by South Korea, meaning Korea is united under the Seoul government, and the separate North Korean state goes away and the regime is gone. Furthermore, North Korea is very worried about being attacked by the United States, has been since the Korean War. During the Korean Wars, this is not talked about a lot among Americans, but the United States bombed North Korea more or less back into the Stone Age. That's really where the expression began. So the North Koreans know about and remember that capability of the United States to carry out tremendous destruction through bombardment, aerial bombardment. Furthermore, the United States has frequently made, particularly during that time of the Korean War, but some on occasion afterwards as well, frequently made threats to use nuclear weapons against North Korea. General MacArthur, for example, actually proposed as a serious policy proposal that the United States ought to explode a series of nuclear bombs across what was originally the DMZ and now the DMZ, to create a field of radiation to prevent more Chinese and North Korean troops from entering into the South. So you could call it paranoia, but the North Koreans have a pretty firm basis for their fear of an American attack. It's hard for Americans to understand now why the North Koreans would think that, because we think of American policy as not at all wanting to get involved in another war or defense of it. North Koreans have a different view, and this informs their policy. So North Korea is a weak country that feels vulnerable on the one hand, but on the other hand, the North Koreans have found that threatening attack is an effective strategy of the weak in their case. How can they compensate for being much economically weaker than South Korea, even probably having weaker military forces than South Korea by itself, let alone South Korea plus the United States? Well, one of the ways they've tried to do that was through this strategy of bravado, in effect arguing that if you go to war with us, perhaps we might lose, but we'll cause you a lot of pain. We might die, but we'll take off one of your arms. And betting that the relatively soft democracies in South Korea, the United States, and Japan are countries in which the public will say, no, we don't want that. We don't want our arm torn off, even if it means destroying our enemy. So demanding that their government find a way to make this threat go away. They've used this fear as part of a strategy of extortion that's been successful for them for many years running now. So nuclear weapons are part of the strategy of intimidation and extortion. They can arm themselves with nuclear weapons. They have now an additional card to play in threatening South Korea, Japan, and the United States.
That there were many people who stayed on base and they lived in a bubble. Please, you are part of our community, so come join our activities, join our organizations, because then you will get a taste of what it is like to live as a part of the community in Manoa, and I welcome you. As Bronson said, I have been a community organizer for many, many years. There's such a thing as the Neighborhood Security Watch Program, which is also a national program. And in that capacity, what I do is I am an area coordinator for my area. And every week, I give my neighbors crime statistics, and I tell them if there are, robberies close by, or thieves, or burglaries, or, I give them warnings and things like that. So I've been doing that for about 10 years. And then, about 4 years ago, we were privy to take a course. It was for community leaders, and it was sponsored by the federal government. And so I helped gather a group of community leaders to listen to what the federal government said to us as community leaders. I don't remember anything about what was said in the 4-hour course except one thing. When disaster strikes, we're not going to get immediate help. And there's going to be a gap in which we will be on our own. And that really struck in our heads. Shortly thereafter, we were invited to another course. And that course was for caregivers of elderly. And we have a very old population in this valley. We have about 3,000 to 4,000 elderly. In my neighborhood watch alone, a couple of years ago, there were 3 people who were over 100 years old. So you can imagine the kind of situation we would be in if something happened and we were expecting help from our city, from our state, from our federal government, and nobody showed up. And so that is why 4 years ago we started Be Ready Mānoa. It is a non-profit organization, and I don't know about your country's culture, but in the United States, Americans have do-it-yourself kind of attitude. And so this is all about self-help. This is all about self-help. And one of the things we asked for, we have, nuclear attacks is a minor threat. The 3 big threats we have are floods, hurricanes, and tsunamis. Flood, we had one in 2004, which caused about $3-4 million worth of damage. The flood, the stream, which is normally very low, came up, went over the banks, and came to the University of Hawaii and entered, I think it was Hamilton Library, and destroyed many documents. So today, we have what is known as stream observers, and anytime there is something, warning of flash floods, people are watching the gauges. So we have about 6 volunteers who said, okay, if they have a signal, we're going to watch. And as soon as it got to a certain level, we were going to call 911 and ask them to close the bridge, and also try to get machinery up there to dig the bed of the stream. The other thing that we're concerned about is hurricanes. We are an old community, and we have a lot of wooden, old, single-wall homes. So we need to reinforce. We have hurricane clips, etc. We're trying all we can do to prepare. The third thing we're concerned about is tsunami. Now, you think, well, Waikiki is 4 miles away, and we are uphill. You know what? We are considered a tsunami refuge. So in the event of a tsunami, you're going to have hundreds of people from the Waikiki area, Kapahulu, all these areas, and they're going to be coming up to our valley looking for food and water. So we had to really think about what we're going to do. So we formed this organization 4 years ago, and we prepared a Manoa disaster plan. And then we knew that we were not prepared, so we started what is known as community emergency response training. And this is going on right now. In fact, one of your members, Syed Khan, is taking the course, and I applaud him. I'm going to leave this with someone who is willing to start an East-West Center emergency response team, and you can have this. Maybe you're too late for our CERT course, but you're not too late to take ham radio classes. And again, you are willing, you're able, and it's free. You notice there's emphasis on free because Americans like free things. So we provide free snacks, free babysitting even, and free courses. So yes, we are indeed a celebrity. Our motto is this. And what do you think is the most important word in our motto? Together, we are going to prepare, we're going to survive, and afterwards, we're going to thrive. The most important word in our motto is together. We have found that you cannot survive by yourself. We are a community, and we have to plan to help others. So we try to do all kinds of silly things, and my thing is water. Do you know how important water is? They say that you need to save 1 gallon of water per day for 2 weeks now. Okay, do you know how much water that is? This one is one of my water containers. It's 6.5 gallons. So I need about 2 of these, right, for my family. Have you ever thought 1 gallon? Here's a gallon. You know how many of these I have? I have about 2 dozen. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, but you know, I'm going to keep on collecting these because sooner or later, people are going to be begging me for water to share my water with them. And at least I will be able to do this. I'm very concerned about water. At first, I bought bottled water. You know how expensive that is? You know how cheap regular tap water is? $4 for 1,000 gallons. So that's why I changed my method, and now I have all these recyclable things. I even have this, which is a collapsible container. I even have this. It's a high volume water purifier. You think I'm crazy? Do you know that all our streams in Hawaii are polluted? So you cannot just go and get stream water. And you know how much water it takes to flush a toilet? So we have to think about all these things. Our motto is to train, train, and train some more, because there's going to be complete panic and chaos when disaster strikes. But hopefully, there'll be less panic and less chaos. Now, we strongly recommend that you all join East-West Center Community Emergency Response Team, because you may have people in this room who are leaders, in fact you all are leaders, and who have a lot of knowledge. But I would much rather have trained volunteers. As old and helpless as I am, I may be better than one of you who has all these skills, because you are a spontaneous volunteer. Because we have a plan and we've been working together. We know each other, right? All our strengths and weaknesses. This is what I was issued by the federal government. I got a vest, I got a patch, I got my hat, and this is what they gave me. That was about 3 years ago. Do you know what they get now? They get a patch. So what are they telling you? What are they telling us? Money's not available. So more and more, the communities are going to have to do it themselves. So, you know, we are neighbors, and we would like to offer our help. Please come to our next CERT training, which probably won't be until fall, but you can take the ham radio, which will help you with your communication. And in October, we're going to have an urban survival fair. 4 years ago, we had a fair, and we had almost 2,000 people come. We would very much like to have the East-West Center Disaster Preparedness Team have a booth, and you can be talking about how you're going to survive in the event of a real disaster. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Okay. I used to, as Ann said earlier, I used to run the Pacific Disaster Center, so we're sort of involved in that whole melange of activities, but I would just go back to the presentation you just heard, and that is in disaster management. There's an interesting statistic, and that is in the case of a major disaster, between 70 and 85% of the people who are rescued in a major disaster are rescued by other people than emergency managers, or all kinds of areas, all kinds of activities have been specifically designed for it. It's basically their friends, their neighbors, their community. These are the people that save the lives of people during major disasters. And so I commend you for your activity, and it is recognized within the field as probably the most single important thing you can do if you really want to save lives during a disaster. You need a trained community to do that. There's another interesting thing about the community in terms of disaster management, in that it used to be that everybody relied on the government or some other agency to do that. And then after we had Katrina and a few other major disasters in the United States, the whole philosophy of disaster management changed, and it became community-based disaster management. No longer relying on the major government facilities and activities, although after the disaster, or immediately after, they're a major composition of the response and recovery teams. But it still goes back to the fact that we finally realized after Katrina and some major disaster in the United States, the community is the thing you need to be focused on. So disaster management is really focused on that now, and almost globally. There's another issue with that, though. Is the community, of course, is made up of people. And so the baseline of it is really your own personal responsibility to be prepared for disaster. And I think if you look very closely at all the activities been done by the state and the government and other agencies during the false alarm that we had, there's two things that they basically talked about. There were two kinds of people. These were the people, there was one group that was panic driven, and the other one, panic driven, mean running around not knowing what to do or where to go or who to call or how to call. And then the other ones who said, I'm toast already, so I'm not going to worry about it. But those were the two really identifiable responses to this disaster, potential disaster. And it just shows what is really the problem today, and that is the failure to educate the public about what to do in the event of, in this case, a potential nuclear detonation, or the immediacy of one. So it just goes to show that a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of experience goes a long ways and saves a lot of lives. And it's not really looking at that particular issue. It's looking at what are the baseline activities that are important. And for us, because of our community here, which are students and others, our most important problem is to deal with is the students. What are the students prepared to do this? Some of the students obviously had a little bit of experience, because the one place they all headed for was over at the library, and because they knew it had a basement. And they also knew, they probably didn't know this, but the safest place you could probably be is in the library, because not only does the library building itself absorb the radiation and all the other kinds of activities, but what's really the absorber are the books. And so if you're in there in a bunch of in the library amongst this large number of books, not only do you have the structure, but you got the books. They're both protecting you from radiation. So it is undoubtedly one of the best places to be. In your own home, however, it is, if you have bookshelves and those things in a closet, it's on the best place to be is in a closet near a bookshelf. Now, that's a very simple thing, but it's something that you can do very quickly. Why is that important? Because if it's a nuclear strike that we talk about all the time, if it is, you got how many minutes before it goes boom? You hear about it, then it goes boom. At most, you got 12 minutes. So don't waste your time running outside. Don't waste your time going anywhere else. Don't waste your time doing anything other than finding your closet in the middle of your house or in the middle of your dorm, and get in there. And this goes back to show you how old I am. You duck and cover. How many of you heard that term? That was during the old days when we were worried about atomic bombs and all this sort of thing. But duck and cover was really a very serious issue, because if you get down under something, you protect yourself and cover up the most vulnerable part of your body. That's the best possible place to go. So it wasn't just a saying; it had a really, really good foundation in it. So we're talking now about this, the potential nuclear strike, but everything I'm going to say in the the following couple minutes is, it also applies to what the most likely event is going to be. And it's not going to be a nuclear bomb. It's going to be a dirty bomb. It's going to be a radiological event, which is not going to decimate a huge area. But depending on what it's constructed of and how it's constructed, the spillover, that is the fallout around it, can be very, very serious. So you have to sort of know what to do if either one of these happens. You do the same thing, and basically you start the whole process. If you're outside, then you basically go inside and you take cover there wherever you can. And if you're outside, and then you find the nearest building that you can find. But the other thing you do is, you're never going to need this, but the real thing you do is, if there's a bomb, or if there's this nuclear event, the one thing you do is do not watch it. Okay, don't watch it. Put your head on the ground, keep your eyes in the ground, don't look up, because the iridescent blast probably will blind you, depending on how close you are. So these are not things you're going to have to do, but there are things you should be aware of that are part of this process. So now I'm going to go back to what you should do. The first thing you could do, and most people here, was they didn't know what to do or who to call or what to do. So the first thing you can do now is you can go back to your dorm or your room or wherever, and you can actually make a plan for how you're going to contact your family and what you're going to do when that sort of thing. Where's a meeting point that they know that you will be if you're out running around? These are all kinds of things that most people have not even thought about doing. But if you really want to be prepared for any kind of a disaster, then you should have this plan firmly in your mind, with your parents, with your wife or your children or whoever it is, so that there isn't this great concern about what are we going to do. We're going to do this, and you know what this is. Most people don't have that plan. So go home, make one, write it down, tell everybody, and you've already taken step 2. The first step was going home. The second step is making a plan. And if you're really concerned about these efforts, the other thing you should do is you should get in touch with the local officials who are knowledgeable of this and find out if they have fallout shelters or where the recommended places to go. That's what you do in a hurricane. That's what you do in tidal wave, all these sorts of things. They're the same simple things you do for those disasters that you do here. So just a couple other things of interest to take away if you ever have this problem. Maybe you'll think of them. But if the main thing to do, of course, is shelter in place. Stay at home. Put yourself in an area. But there's a couple other things you should do because you're at a university. Do not use the elevators. Do not use the elevators. If there is an attack of that nature, the first thing that's going to happen is the power is going to go out, because the pulse of the bomb is just going to blow the electricity out. So it's very important for other reasons as well, but don't use the elevators. The other thing is, if you're in the dorms and the buildings, don't get near the kitchen areas. Stay away from the kitchen areas, because they may be gas fired, they may have propane. You don't want to be there. You want to be away from the kitchen areas in these places. The other thing is if you're not, as I said earlier, if you're not home, find some place to go to. And if you can, keep in mind that concrete and brick buildings are the best places to be. They are the best places to look for. And as you may have noticed, several people dove down the manholes in the sewer system. And probably not a bad place, but it's not where you really want to be for a variety of reasons. But that's something. The other thing is, keep in mind, if you were ever faced with a nuclear event, and if you would become a prepper, which you ought to be, at least to some extent, you're not going to have access to food and water for 14 days. You can't go out if it's radiated. You have to stay in. You need to have this, so you got to make sure that whatever you're planning on doing, that it isn't a 2 or 3 day stay. It's probably going to be much more like 7 to 14 days, depending on what's happening. So those are just very practical things that you need to have. The other thing is your cell phone. This puppy is not going to work. Okay? Do not rely on your cell phone. It's not going to happen. So you need a really good, just need a really good AM radio. Not FM, AM radio. Now, that's where all the communication is going to be coming. That's where all the chatter is going to be. That's where you're going to get the best information. The other sources probably not going to be available to you. So make sure that when even if now and you're in your rooms and there's all kinds of other disasters, make sure you got an AM, FM radio. I know people would like to listen to FM, but get the AM, FM radio. Make sure you have one of those. And the other thing is that if you basically were ever unfortunate enough to be in an event like this, one thing that happens is with the radiation and all of the stuff that goes with it, that unto itself, if you're intimately associated with it, probably doesn't make any difference. But very often, one of the biggest issues that causes the most deaths, most cancers, is make sure you are not in any way associated with the dust. Now this doesn't have to be a nuclear explosion. This can be some kind of a smaller one that might be a terrorist kind of thing. But make sure you're not associated with the dust. The dust is what basically is carrying the radioactive material. It's what you breathe in, it's what you get in you. If you eat it, you've got it all over you. So the best thing to do is to make sure you stay out of the dust. The other thing is water being available. Make very close, pay very close attention to not going out not going out and coming back in and wearing your clothes, etc., without you take them off, take a bath, do this, because they're what's carrying all the dust. And finally, for the ladies in here, there's one thing. If you use hair conditioner in the event of one of these disasters, do not use it. Because what hair conditioners really does is it attracts all of the radioactive material. It concentrates it on your hair, it keeps it there, and you are really in big trouble. Okay, so I don't want to go into the details or scare anybody with this, but there are the very basic things that you can do and you should be aware of, so that you have some chance of coming out of this kind of event. God forbid it ever happens, in reasonably good shape. And always wear your mask if you have one.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Alright, so we have a few minutes for some questions and clarification. And maybe Helen, I don't know if you wanted to share what you have in your basic emergency kit there, or if you have a flyer about that.
Well, I want to offer, this is called a go bag, and the reason why it is so bright is because you have it filled with the necessities that you need, and you just grab and go. So I have enough for every one of you who showed up today, and these are some of the things that you should have in your go bag. Bottled water, you need protein or granola bars, you need a flashlight, extra batteries, matches, duct tape, whistle, first aid kit, scissors or pocket knife, cash, not bigger than $20. Nobody's gonna have change. You need small money. Toilet paper, toiletries, extra set of clothes, blanket, Mylar, ID, birth certificate, family photo you needed, little tablet, pen, portable radio, playing cards if you need it. But it's supposed to fit in here.
I need another bag.
You're gonna need water.
I need a.
You need all the,
Oh.
these are all the things that I have.
I can pack good, but I can't pack that good.
I have a poncho, I have flashlight, I even have a portable.
What is your address? I come in your home.
Seriously, I'm Helen.
Thank you. But come later, I have some more for you.
Okay. Okay. All right, any questions?